Some people object that in order for the eye to modify and still remain a useful instrument to its owner, many changes would have had to take place simultaneously. However, it is not necessary to suppose this if the modifications were extremely slight and gradual.
The Italian alphabet has fewer letters in comparison with the English alphabet. Italian does not use the letters J, K, W, X or Y except in borrowed words. However, young Italians are increasingly using the letter-kin words that
Not a lot is known about how the transportation of goods by water first began. Large cargo boats were being used in some parts of the world up to 5,000 years ago. However, sea trade became more widespread when large sailing boats traveled between ports, carrying spices, perfumes and objects made by hand.
Fence, humanly erected barrier between two divisions of land, used to mark a legal or other boundary, to keep animals or people in or out, and sometimes as an ornament. In newly settled lands, fences are usually made of materials at hand, example, stone, earth, or wood.
Does it feel like everywhere you turn there's more food? Fast food joints like McDonald's and Taco Bell abound. And big box stores like Costco, Walmart and Target sell mounds of groceries. Just the slightest pang of hunger and around the corner there's another restaurant or retailer enticing us to buy more food.
The climate for doing business improved in Egypt more than in any other country last year, according to a global study that revealed a wave of company-oriented reforms across the Middle East. The World Bank rankings, which look at business regulations, also showed that the pace of business reforms in Eastern Europe was overtaking East Asia.
As time passes, you get information where mind-blowing. As time passes, you get information where mind-blowing.
Would you pass the material textbook on the table? Would you pass the material textbook on the table?
Adults need to have more sleeping time. Adults need to have more sleeping time. The chemistry building is still open during vacation. The chemistry building is still open during vacation.
His academic supervisor called in to see him last night. His academic supervisor called in to see him last night.
It's important to keep this medicine in the fridge. It's important to keep this medicine in the fridge.
We developed a method for evaluation of dynamic changes. We developed a method for evaluation of dynamic changes.
The mentors are so helpful for students. The mentors are so helpful for students.
Students can share their foods at noon. Students can share their foods at noon.
Most printers in the library are out of ink. Most printers in the library are out of ink.
The following graph shows yearly per capita meat consumption, expressed in kilograms, for various nations between 1961 and 2009, including the United States, China, and Liberia. The USA, which is depicted in blue, begins at 90 kilograms and ends at 120 kilograms in 2009. China, which is depicted in red, begins at 5 kilograms in 1961 and quickly rises to a maximum of 60 kilograms in 2009. However, the consumption of meat has remained largely consistent over time in Liberia, India, and Ethiopia, which are depicted in green, orange, and gray, respectively. In summary, this graph provides excellent data on meat consumption. The life cycle of a fly is depicted in the graph below, which provides information on how houseflies function. In the beginning, an adult fly lays eggs, which develop into the first larval stage. The larva is relatively tiny at this stage. The cycle then advances to the second larval stage, during which the larva grows bigger but its color stays largely fixed. The third larval stage is marked by a significant increase in size and the beginning of a darker color. After that, the cycle reaches the pupa stage where the larva is covered with dark skin. The pupa becomes an adult fly eventually, which can lay eggs again and allow the process repeats.
The most potent passports in the world are shown in the following graph. The items consist of a list of names, rankings, and visa-free country numbers for various nations. According to this graph, Japan is represented by a value of 103 in the first row. Singapore's value is 102 in the second row, and so is the value of other countries. This graph demonstrates that South Korea, with a value of 199, has the third highest value. From this graph, it is also clear that Luxembourg has the lowest value, which is 179. Japan has the strongest passport. To sum up,
The consumption of fast food is broken down into meals in the graph below. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks are among the offerings. This graph indicates that the value for breakfast is approximately 22.7%, while the value for a snack is little lower at approximately 22.6%. This graph demonstrates that the greatest value of lunch is 43.07 cents. This graph also shows that dinner has a 42% value, which is the second highest number. In conclusion, there are 4 types of fast food consumption.
Supersymmetry is a mathematical idea that people have developed in effort to understand the sharpest organizing principle for the fundamental constituents of matter. You see, we have learned that particles that seem to be different can actually secretly be united by certain symmetry principles. So we used the fact that there are symmetric objects in the world like a sphere or basketball. You turn a sphere, and even though you've transformed it, it looks the same fundamentally. We found that certain particles, when you transform one particle into another, even though looks like the identity of the particle is changed, overall the equations describing it they don't change at all at an underlying level of symmetry. But we've not been able to do is find a symmetry that would relate certain kinds of particles, namely matter particles and force particles. Matter particles are particles like electron, muons and quarks, force particles are like photons and gluons and WZ bosons. Supersymmetry is a symmetry that actually relates to these two classes of particles. And people have proven that supersymmetry is the last possible symmetry of the fundamental particles that are mathematics. Reality has not yet been shown to make use of it. So people are now trying to see whether that symmetry might actually be working in the world. Can be found evidence for it in our understanding of fundamental particles.
One other keys to Apple is Apple's incredibly collaborative company, and so you know how many committees we have in Apple? 0. No committee. We are organized like a startup. One person's in charge of iPhone OS software, one person is in charge of Mac hardware. One person is in charge of iPhone hardware engineering, another person is in charge of worldwide marketing, another person's in charge of operations. We're organized like a startup. We're the biggest startup on the planet, and we all meet for 3 hours once a week and we talk about everything we're doing, the whole business, and there's tremendous teamwork at the top of the company, which filters down to tremendous teamwork throughout the company. And teamwork is dependent on trusting the other folks to come through with their part without watching them all the time, but trusting that they're gonna come through with their parts, and that's what we do really well, and we're great at figuring out how to divide things up in these great teams that we have and all work on the same thing, touch bases frequently and bring it all together into a product. We do that really well, and so what I do all day is meet with teams of people and work on ideas and solve problems to make new products, to make new marketing programs, whatever it is.
Who serves food in a restaurant? Who serves food in a restaurant?
How many seasons are in a year? How many seasons are in a year?
Who is the person in charge of a football match? Who is the person in charge of a football match?
What is the study of the stars and planets called? What is the study of the stars and planets called?
What is a painting of a person's head usually called? What is a painting of a person's head usually called?
What point of the compass is directly opposite the east? What point of the compass is directly opposite the east?
If you like our video, kindly subscribe our channel and also press below bell icon. Thank you.